The rain hammered against Michael's roof with vengeful intensity, each drop part of a symphony that had lasted 3 straight days. Living on the outskirts of Blackwood Forest had its perks: privacy, quiet, gorgeous views, but during spring storms, the isolation felt less like freedom and more like abandonment. Michael added another log to the fireplace and settled back into his armchair with a dog-eared copy of The Old Man and the Sea. At 32, he'd built this cabin with his own hands after leaving behind a lucrative but soul-crushing architecture career in the city. Now he designed custom furniture, sold just enough to get by, and considered himself content, if not exactly fulfilled. The crash from outside barely registered at first, just another branch falling victim to the storm. But the second noise, a metallic clang followed by what sounded distinctly like a yelp, jolted him upright. "Hello?" he called through the back door, rain immediately soaking his flannel shirt. Lightning illuminated his yard in stuttering flashes, revealing nothing unusual near the woodpile or his pickup truck. But the door to his workshop shed swung open and closed with the wind. Grabbing a flashlight and cursing his lack of an umbrella, Michael sprinted across the muddy yard. "Anyone there?" he called, pushing the shed door fully open. His beam of light swept across his workbench, the half-finished bookcase he'd been crafting for a client in town, his tools hanging neatly on the wall, and then caught a pair of luminous eyes reflecting back at him from behind a stack of lumber. "Jesus!" Michael stumbled backward, nearly dropping the flashlight. "Please," came a soft voice. "I'm not going to hurt you." A girl, no, a young woman, emerged cautiously from her hiding place. She was soaking wet, her dark hair plastered to her pale face, wearing only a thin white dress that clung to her slender frame. She couldn't have been more than 25. Most striking were those eyes, an unusual amber color that seemed to absorb his flashlight beam rather than reflect it. "What are you doing in my shed?" Michael asked, keeping his distance. "I needed shelter." Her voice carried an accent he couldn't place. "I've been walking for days. I saw no lights nearby except yours, but I was afraid to knock." She hugged herself, shivering violently. Michael's suspicion warred with concern. She was clearly in distress, but people didn't just wander through Blackwood Forest, especially not young women in thin dresses during spring storms. "What's your name?" he asked. "Lily," she answered after a slight hesitation that made him wonder if it was her real name. "I'm Michael." "Look, there's nothing out here for miles." "How did you get here without a car?" "I walked," she repeated firmly. "Please, I can leave in the morning. I just need somewhere dry for tonight." A crack of thunder made her flinch and crouch slightly, a reaction that seemed almost animal in its instinctiveness. Michael sighed, already knowing he couldn't send her back into the storm. "Come inside. You need dry clothes and something warm to drink." In the cabin's light, he could see her better. Beneath the rain and exhaustion, she was striking, high cheekbones, full lips, and those unusual amber eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. But there was something else about her, something he couldn't quite identify, a wildness, perhaps, or a tension in the way she held herself, as if ready to flee at any moment. "The bathroom's through there," he said, pointing. "I'll find you some clothes. They'll be too big, but at least they're dry." "Thank you," she said, still standing rigidly in the entryway, water pooling at her feet. "You're safe here," Michael added, not entirely sure why he felt compelled to reassure her. Something in her expression shifted, a flicker of what might have been amusement, or perhaps doubt. "No one is ever truly safe," she murmured, and then disappeared into the bathroom. While the shower ran, Michael set out sweatpants and a flannel shirt, then prepared hot chocolate, something his mother had always made during storms. He tried not to think about the strangeness of the situation or the growing certainty that Lily was running from something, or someone. When she emerged in his oversized clothes, her wet hair combed back, she looked younger and somehow more vulnerable. She accepted the mug with evident surprise. "Sweet," she commented after sipping cautiously. It's hot chocolate. Haven't you had it before? She shook her head, then quickly added, not for a very long time. So, Michael said, settling across from her at the kitchen table, want to tell me the real reason you're wandering around Blackwood Forest in the middle of nowhere during the worst storm of the season? Lily stared into her mug. I had to leave home. I can't go back. Are you in some kind of trouble? Because if someone's hurt you. No, she interrupted. It's not like that. It's. She looked up at him, those strange eyes suddenly intense. It's complicated. And not something I can explain easily. Especially not to, she stopped herself. To a stranger, Michael finished for her. She nodded slowly. Yes. To a stranger. Outside, the rain continued its relentless assault, and somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled, an unusual sound for this part of the forest. Michael noticed Lily's head tilt slightly, as if listening to something only she could hear. You can take the spare bedroom tonight, he said finally. We'll figure out what to do in the morning. As he showed her to the room, he couldn't shake the feeling that by inviting her in, he'd set something in motion that couldn't be undone. Something that would change everything. Thank you, Michael, Lily said softly as he turned to leave. You're kind. I hope you won't regret it. The sincerity in her voice was unmistakable. So was the warning. Morning arrived with unexpected clarity after days of relentless rain. Sunlight streamed through Michael's kitchen windows as he prepared breakfast, casting golden rectangles across the worn wooden floor. He'd woken early, a habit from his years of construction work, and had already been up for an hour before he heard movement from the spare room. I made coffee, he called when Lily appeared in the doorway, still swimming in his borrowed clothes. And eggs, if you're hungry. She approached the kitchen cautiously, nostrils flaring slightly as she inhaled the aromas. It smells good, she said, though her expression suggested uncertainty rather than appetite. As they ate, Michael couldn't help but notice the peculiar way she handled her fork, with precise, deliberate movements, as if she were mimicking behavior she'd observed but rarely practiced. She ate voraciously once she started, though, finishing her plate before he'd made it halfway through his own. So, Michael began, refilling her coffee mug, what's the plan? Is there someone I can call for you? Family? Friends? Lily shook her head firmly. No calls. Please. Lily, I'm trying to help, but you have to give me something. Why were you in the forest? Where are you from? She stared out the window for a long moment, her profile sharp against the morning light. I come from a community. North of here. We live differently than most people. She turned back to him, her amber eyes searching his face. I left because I had to. If I'd stayed. She trailed off, then added more firmly, I needed to leave before the changes started. Changes? Michael prompted. It happens to all of us around my age. A transition that. She hesitated, seeming to choose her words carefully, that makes us suitable for pairing. Michael frowned. You mean like an arranged marriage? A small, bitter smile crossed her lips. Something like that. Only with less choice. Throughout the day, Michael tried to maintain some normalcy, working in his shed on the bookcase while Lily explored the cabin and its surroundings. He caught glimpses of her through the window, moving with a fluid grace that seemed almost choreographed, pausing occasionally to examine a flower or listen to birdsong with intense concentration. By afternoon, a noticeable shift had occurred in her demeanor. The calm attentiveness of morning gave way to restlessness. She paced the length of the living room repeatedly, her movements becoming more agitated with each circuit. Are you feeling all right? Michael asked when she abruptly stopped pacing to press her forehead against the cool glass of the window. It's starting, she whispered, more to herself than to him. When she turned, her eyes seemed brighter somehow, the amber deepening to an almost golden hue. I should go. I shouldn't have stayed this long. Go where? There's nothing out there for miles. Michael approached her cautiously, noticing the slight tremor in her hands. You're clearly not well. Let me help. You can't, she snapped, then immediately softened. I'm sorry. It's not. I'm not myself right now. That evening, as sunset painted the sky in vivid oranges and purples, Michael found Lily standing on the porch, her arms wrapped around herself despite the mild temperature. She'd been avoiding him for hours, claiming she needed rest, but the dark circles under her eyes suggested sleep had eluded her. You're burning up, Michael said with alarm when his hand accidentally brushed hers as he handed her a glass of water. It's normal, she insisted, though she gulped the water gratefully. Part of the change. This doesn't seem normal, Lily. You need a doctor. No. The vehemence in her voice startled him. No doctors. They wouldn't understand. They'd want to study me, and then they'd find the others. Before Michael could respond, a distant howl echoed through the trees, the same wolf-like sound he'd heard the night before. Lily's reaction was immediate and startling, her entire body tensed, and for a moment, Michael could have sworn her pupils elongated, becoming more oval than round. They're looking for me, she whispered, backing away from the porch railing. Who is? Lily, you need to tell me what's going on. Michael reached for her arm, but she jerked away with surprising strength. Don't touch me right now, she warned, her voice lower than he'd heard it before. It's not safe. Later that night, after a tense dinner where Lily barely spoke but consumed twice as much food as the previous meal, Michael awoke to strange sounds coming from the spare bedroom. A sort of low, rhythmic keening interspersed with what sounded like scratching. Heart pounding, he approached her door and knocked softly. Lily? Are you okay? The sound stopped immediately. Go away, came her muffled response. Please, Michael. I need to be alone. You're scaring me, he admitted through the door. Whatever's happening, let me help. Silence stretched between them, broken only by her ragged breathing. Then, slowly, the door opened a crack. In the dim hallway light, her face appeared transformed, flushed with fever, eyes gleaming with an almost phosphorescent quality, her dark hair wild around her face. You want to know what's happening? She asked, her voice a rasp. I'm changing. My body is preparing. She stepped back, allowing the door to open wider, revealing long scratch marks on the wooden headboard of the bed. And I'm afraid of what I might do if I stay. Michael stood frozen, unable to reconcile the rational part of his mind that sought logical explanations with the evidence before his eyes. This was beyond illness, beyond any normal human experience he understood. What are you? He finally asked, the question escaping before he could consider its implications. Lily's smile was sad and knowing. Tomorrow, she promised. If you still want me here, I'll tell you everything tomorrow. But tonight, you should lock your door. As Michael retreated to his room, more confused than afraid, he heard her door close softly. The scratching sounds resumed, quieter now, as if she were trying to contain whatever urges drove her. Outside, closer than before, the wolf howled again. This time, from her room, Lily answered, a sound so primal and inhuman that it sent shivers down Michael's spine. Despite her warning, he didn't lock his door. Dawn broke with an unnatural stillness. No birdsong, no rustling leaves, just the heavy silence that sometimes preceded storms or significant events. Michael had slept fitfully, his dreams filled with running figures and amber eyes that followed him through dark forests. He found Lily sitting cross-legged on the living room floor, perfectly motionless, wearing the same clothes but looking somehow different. Her hair seemed thicker, wilder, and when she opened her eyes at his approach, the amber had deepened to a rich gold with flecks of something darker at the center. "You didn't lock your door," she said quietly. Michael leaned against the doorframe. "No, I didn't. That was foolish. Maybe." He shrugged. "But I'm still here, and so are you. And you owe me an explanation." Lily unfolded herself from the floor with fluid grace, moving to the window where morning light illuminated her profile. For several long moments, she said nothing. Then, "My people call themselves the Lunari. We've lived in the northern forests for thousands of years, mostly separate from humans." "Your people," Michael repeated carefully. "You're saying you're not human?" A small, sad smile crossed her face. "Not entirely, no. We share ancestry from a very distant past, but we evolved differently. Adapted differently." She turned to face him fully. "We're what some of your legends might call shifters." Michael felt a surreal disconnect, as if he were still dreaming. "Shifters? As in?" "We don't transform completely, not like in your movies," she explained, her voice matter-of-fact. "The changes are more subtle, enhanced senses, strength, speed. Our eyes change, our teeth, some aspects of our skeletal structure. Just enough to survive in the wilderness when needed." Michael sank onto the couch, trying to process her words against the evidence of his eyes. The woman before him looked human, albeit unusually intense, with those extraordinary eyes. "You mentioned mating," he said finally. "Last night, you said your body was preparing." Lily nodded, a flush spreading across her cheeks. "Once every 7 years, when we reach maturity, our bodies undergo a biological imperative, what you might call a mating season. It lasts about 2 weeks. During this time, our senses become heightened, our strength increases, and we're driven to find a compatible partner. And that's what's happening to you now?" "Yes." She wrapped her arms around herself, as if trying to contain something within. "I left because I was promised to the son of our pack leader, Thomas. A political arrangement. I've known him my whole life and never felt." She shook her head. "I couldn't bear it. So I ran." "But you can't run from biology," Michael guessed. "No. And soon, I won't be able to control the changes or the urges." She looked at him directly, unflinching. "That's why I should leave. The Lunari are tracking me, those howls we've heard. They're getting closer." Michael tried to ignore the chill that ran down his spine. "What happens if they find you?" "They'll take me back. Thomas will claim me. I'll spend my life in a pairing without choice." The simplicity of her statement belied the weight behind it, a lifetime of predetermined existence. Michael felt a surge of protectiveness that surprised him with its intensity. "And if you stay here?" Lily's expression twisted with something between hope and despair. "I would need help to get through the cycle. It's not something I can do alone. The physical changes, the heightened emotions, they can be overwhelming without a partner." The implication hung in the air between them, unspoken but clear. "I should show you," she said suddenly. "So you understand what you'd be dealing with." Before Michael could respond, she stepped into the center of the room, closed her eyes, and took a deep breath. The change began subtly, her fingers elongating slightly, nails thickening into something more claw-like. Her facial structure shifted minutely, cheekbones becoming more pronounced, jaw stronger. When she opened her eyes again, the pupils had changed from round to vertical slits, giving her a distinctly feline appearance. "This is partial emergence," she explained, her voice deeper than before. "During the height of the cycle, the changes become more pronounced." Michael found himself speechless, torn between scientific fascination and instinctual fear. Part of him wanted to run, to dismiss this as an elaborate hallucination. But another part, a more primal part, recognized the truth before him. "I believe you," he said finally. "But I don't understand why you came here, to my home. Of all places. Lily's transformed features softened slightly. I didn't choose consciously. When we're approaching our cycle, we're drawn to compatible genetic matches. Something about your scent, your energy. She looked almost embarrassed. My instincts led me here. Compatible, Michael repeated. You mean I could potentially? Yes. She nodded once, definitively. You could help me through this. But it would change you too. Not fully, humans don't transform physically the way we do, but the connection leaves a permanent mark. You would always be tied to our world afterward. Before Michael could process this revelation, a sound from outside caught their attention, the distant rumble of vehicles approaching on the forest road. Lily tensed immediately, her enhanced features sharpening with alarm. They're coming, she whispered. They've found me. Through the window, Michael glimpsed two black SUVs turning onto the long driveway that led to his cabin. Lily backed away, panic evident in her strange, beautiful eyes. It's Thomas and the elders, she hissed. They can't make me go back. I won't let them. Michael made a split-second decision, driven by something he couldn't entirely explain, perhaps basic human decency, or perhaps something deeper, more instinctual. The cellar, he said firmly, moving to a small door near the kitchen. There's a hidden room beyond the wine racks. My grandfather built it during Prohibition. Go now. As Lily disappeared below, Michael closed the door behind her and moved to face his unexpected visitors, uncertain exactly what he was protecting or why, only that something within him had already decided she deserved the right to choose her own path. The vehicle stopped in front of his cabin, and four figures emerged, 3 men and a woman, all with the same intense presence that Lily possessed. The tallest man stepped forward, his eyes a cold blue-gray that reminded Michael of winter ice. We're looking for a young woman, he said without introduction. She belongs with us. Michael leaned against his doorframe, affecting a casualness he didn't feel. Is that so? And you are? Thomas Blackwolf, the man replied, his voice carrying an undercurrent of barely contained aggression. And Lily Moonshade is my intended. Tell us where she is. I live alone, Michael replied, meeting Thomas's cold gaze without flinching. Haven't seen anyone in weeks. The oldest of the group, a silver-haired man with deeply lined features, stepped forward. His eyes, the same unusual amber as Lily's, narrowed slightly as he studied Michael's face. You're lying, he said simply. Her scent is all over this place. And on you. Thomas advanced, moving with predatory smoothness that made the hair on the back of Michael's neck stand up. We can do this peacefully, human. Just tell us where she's hiding, and we'll be on our way. Even if someone had been here, Michael said carefully, wouldn't that be her choice to make? Whether to go with you or not. The woman laughed, a harsh sound without humor. Choice? Our ways aren't about individual choice. They're about survival, about the strength of the pack. She circled to Michael's right, her movements coordinated with Thomas's approach, like wolves flanking prey. We've lived by these traditions for millennia, the elder added. One rebellious girl doesn't get to upend generations of order because she's afraid of her first cycle. Michael held his ground, though every instinct screamed at him to retreat. I think you should leave. This is private property. Thomas's face transformed then, not the full change that Lily had demonstrated, but enough to reveal elongated canines and eyes that shifted from blue-gray to a metallic silver. You don't give orders to us, human. Last chance to cooperate. The standoff might have escalated further if not for the distant wail of sirens approaching from the direction of town. All 4 visitors tensed, exchanging quick glances. County Sheriff makes a patrol through here every few days, Michael bluffed, silently thanking whatever coincidence had brought law enforcement into the remote area. Should be here any minute. The elder grasped Thomas's shoulder, pulling him back. We go. Now. We can't risk exposure. With obvious reluctance, Thomas retreated, but not before fixing Michael with a stare of pure animosity. This isn't over. She can't hide forever. The cycle will draw her out, or drive her mad. They returned to their vehicles with unnatural speed, disappearing down the driveway just as a sheriff's cruiser crested the hill. Michael released a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding, raising a casual hand to Deputy Rogers, who frequently patrolled the backroads. The deputy slowed, rolling down his window. "Everything okay up here, Michael? Thought I saw unfamiliar vehicles." "Just some lost tourists asking for directions," Michael replied, mustering a calmness he didn't feel. "All good." Only after the cruiser continued its patrol did Michael hurry back inside and open the cellar door. "They're gone," he called down. "For now." Lily emerged, trembling slightly, her features having reverted to their more human appearance. "They'll be back," she whispered. "Thomas won't give up. Not when he's so close." "Then we need to leave," Michael said decisively, already moving toward his bedroom. "Pack whatever you need. We'll take my truck." 20 minutes later, they were bouncing down a rarely used fire road that cut through the densest part of Blackwood Forest, Michael's old pickup handling the rough terrain better than the Lunari's sleek SUVs could manage. He'd thrown together essential supplies, food, water, first aid kit, tent, sleeping bags, working on instinct rather than plan. "Where are we going?" Lily asked, bracing herself against the dashboard as they navigated a particularly steep section. "My father had a hunting cabin about 50 miles deeper into the national forest," Michael explained. "Completely off-grid. Solar panels, rainwater collection. No roads leading to it, we'll have to hike the last 5 miles." The sun was setting by the time they abandoned the truck, concealing it under a camouflage tarp in a dense grove of pines. Michael shouldered the heavier pack, leaving Lily with the lighter supplies as they began their trek into increasingly wild territory. "They can track by scent," Lily warned as they pushed through dense underbrush. "We should cross water when possible." They found a shallow stream and waded along it for nearly a mile before continuing uphill through terrain too rocky to hold footprints. Darkness fell completely, but Lily moved with confidence, her enhanced vision guiding them where Michael would have stumbled blind. "There," she said suddenly, pointing to a barely visible structure nestled among ancient trees. "I can see it." The cabin was smaller than Michael remembered, a single room with a stone fireplace, rustic kitchen area, and a loft space accessed by a ladder. Dust covered every surface, but the structure itself remained sound, the solar system still functioning after Michael reset the breakers. As a dim light flickered on, illuminating the space, Lily sank onto a chair, exhaustion evident in every line of her body. The trek had taken its toll, and Michael could see that the cycle she described was progressing, her skin flushed with fever, eyes brightening to that uncanny gold. "How long can you?" He gestured vaguely, unsure how to phrase the question. "Control it?" She smiled grimly. "Not much longer. A day, maybe 2. Then the full emergence will happen, whether I'm ready or not." Michael busied himself unpacking supplies, trying to process the reality of their situation. "You said I'm compatible. What exactly does that mean?" Lily watched him with those extraordinary eyes. "Lunari recognize potential mates through biochemical markers, pheromones you can't detect consciously. When I found your cabin, it wasn't random. Something in me recognized something in you. And if I help you through this cycle? We would be bonded," she said simply. "Not permanently mated, but connected. You would carry my essence within you, as I would carry yours." Michael paused, a can of soup forgotten in his hand. "Would I become like you?" "No. Humans don't transform physically. But you would gain some of our attributes, enhanced senses, longer life, greater resilience to illness. And you would always be drawn back to me, as I would to you. The implications staggered him, not just the immediate situation, but the future beyond it. A connection to something beyond ordinary human experience, to a world he'd never known existed. Before he could respond, Lily tensed suddenly, her head cocking toward the window. "What is it?" Michael whispered. "They're in the forest," she breathed. "Miles away still, but tracking. Thomas has called for reinforcements." Michael moved to the window, seeing nothing but darkness and trees. "How long do we have?" "Until morning, maybe." She stood, moving to him with fluid grace. "Michael, I won't force this choice on you. You can leave now, tell them I threatened you, made you bring me here. They might believe it." He turned to face her, struck by the fierce determination in her features despite her obvious vulnerability. In the dim light, with her wild hair and golden eyes, she looked both dangerous and beautiful, a creature between worlds. "I'm not leaving you to face them alone," he said with certainty that surprised even him. "Whatever happens next, we face it together." Something flickered in her expression, relief, gratitude, and something deeper he couldn't name. She reached out, her slightly elongated fingers brushing his cheek with unexpected tenderness. "Then we should prepare," she said softly. "Because by sunrise, everything changes." Outside, distant howls echoed through the ancient forest, the sound of hunters closing in on their prey. The cabin transformed into a fortress under Michael's direction. Years of wilderness survival with his father hadn't been wasted. He knew how to make a defensible position from limited resources. They blocked windows with furniture, created tripwires from fishing line around the perimeter, and strategically placed the few tools that might serve as weapons. Lily worked alongside him, her movements becoming increasingly fluid yet erratic as the night progressed. The change was accelerating, her fingers now permanently elongated, eyes glowing gold in the darkness, teeth visibly sharper when she spoke. "Your temperature's rising," Michael observed, touching her forehead gently. "Is this normal?" "Yes," she whispered, leaning into his touch almost involuntarily. "The final stage approaches. By dawn, I won't be entirely myself." They sat before the small fireplace, flames casting dancing shadows across their faces. Outside, the forest had gone unnaturally silent, no insects chirping, no owls calling. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. "Tell me about your life," Michael said suddenly. "Before all this. What was it like growing up as what you are?" Lily's eyes reflected the firelight as she considered his question. "Beautiful, in many ways. We live in harmony with the forest, taking only what we need. Our children run free under the moon, learning to hunt and track before they can read." A smile softened her features. "We have ceremonies for the seasons, stories passed down through generations. Music that would make your heart ache with its beauty." "It sounds wonderful," Michael said. "So why run?" "Because beauty and tyranny often exist side by side," she replied, her voice hardening. "Our traditions preserved us when humans would have hunted us to extinction, but they've become rigid, unyielding. The elders decide everything, who mates with whom, what role each person serves, when we can interact with the human world." She stared into the flames. "I wanted more. Choice. Freedom. The chance to discover who I might become without the weight of 1,000 years of tradition dictating my every step." Michael understood then, her rebellion wasn't just about rejecting Thomas, but about claiming agency over her own existence. Something he'd done himself when he'd abandoned his architecture career to build furniture in the woods. "Dawn's approaching," Lily said suddenly, standing with abrupt urgency. Her body trembled visibly, hands clenching and unclenching. "Michael, I need to tell you something. The bonding, it's not like human mating. It's deeper, more primal. If we do this, parts of you will change forever." "You've said that," he nodded, rising to stand before her. No, you don't understand. Frustration edged her voice. The person I am now, the person you've come to know, she'll be subsumed for a time by something more ancient, more instinctual. And what emerges afterward won't be exactly the same. Michael took her trembling hands in his, noting how the nails had thickened to claws, how the bones had subtly shifted beneath the skin. I'm not exactly the same person I was when you showed up in my shed, either. A sound outside interrupted them, the snap of one of their perimeter alarms. Lily's head turned sharply toward the window, nostrils flaring. They're here, she breathed. 12, maybe 15 of them. Thomas leads them. Michael moved to the window, peering through a small gap in the barricade. In the pre-dawn light, he could make out shadowy figures moving with inhuman grace between the trees, encircling the cabin. At their center stood Thomas, his face already partially transformed, silver eyes gleaming with anticipation. Lily, Thomas's voice carried clearly through the forest stillness. Your cycle peaks with the sunrise. You can feel it, can't you? The need. The hunger. Come out now, accept what must be, and we'll take you home. Your human pet can live. Lily's body convulsed suddenly, a gasp escaping her lips as she doubled over. It's starting, she hissed through clenched teeth. I can't hold it back much longer. Michael made his decision in that moment, driven by something beyond rational thought, an instinct as primal as what drove Lily's transformation. He crossed to her, taking her face in his hands. I choose this, he said firmly. I choose you. Their connection ignited like wildfire, not just physical, but something transcendent that seemed to rewrite the very essence of what Michael had believed himself to be. As sunrise painted the eastern sky in brilliant gold and crimson, something fundamental shifted in both of them. Outside, the Lunari sensed the change. Thomas's howl of rage shattered the dawn silence as he charged toward the cabin, his followers close behind. They broke through the door in a surge of preternatural strength, only to stop abruptly at what they found within. Lily stood transformed, her features settled into a harmonious blend of human and other, radiating a power that filled the small space. Beside her, Michael stood straight-backed and calm, his eyes now flecked with gold that hadn't been there before, his presence somehow larger, more assured. The eldest of the Lunari pushed past Thomas, studying the pair with ancient, knowing eyes. It is done, he said simply. The bond is formed. No. Thomas snarled, his features distorted with rage. She was promised to me. This human has no right. Silence, the elder commanded. You know our oldest laws. When a true bonding occurs during a first cycle, no previous arrangement can supersede it. It has been thus since the beginning. Thomas lunged forward despite the warning, driven by jealousy and wounded pride. What happened next occurred too quickly for human eyes to follow. Lily moved with liquid speed, meeting his charge with equal force. The clash lasted seconds, ending with Thomas thrown back against the wall, a set of parallel claw marks across his chest. I am not yours, Lily stated, her voice deeper than before, resonating with newfound authority. I never was. The elder nodded slowly, a reluctant acknowledgement in his amber eyes. So be it. The bond is recognized. He turned to Michael. Do you understand what you have become, human? You are between worlds now, no longer fully of your kind, yet not fully of ours. Michael felt the changes within him, senses sharper, strength flowing through his limbs, awareness expanded. Beyond the physical, something deeper had altered, a connection to Lily that transcended language, a sense of her thoughts and emotions entwined with his own. I understand enough, he answered. The standoff ended with unexpected civility, the elder establishing new boundaries that neither side had anticipated. Lily would not be forced to return to the pack, but neither would she be cut off entirely. The bond with Michael was acknowledged as legitimate under Lunari law, granting him protected status among their kind. As the Lunari departed, Thomas cast one final look of bitter resentment before disappearing into the forest. The threat wasn't ended, merely postponed. Alone again, Michael and Lily emerged from the cabin into the full morning light. The forest seemed different to his enhanced senses, colors more vivid, sounds more distinct, the very air alive with information he'd never been able to perceive before. "What happens now?" he asked, taking her hand, still changed, still bearing claws, but undeniably hers. Lily looked toward the distant mountains, a smile playing at her transformed features. "Now we find our own way. Neither fully of my world nor yours, but something new." She turned to him, golden eyes bright with possibility. "There are others like us, bonded pairs who've created communities at the boundaries between worlds. Places where tradition and innovation meet, where the old ways and new ideas can coexist." Michael considered the cabin, the forest, the life he'd built for himself. "We'll need to return eventually. I have a business, clients expecting their furniture." "Yes," she agreed. "And I have family among the Lunari who will still welcome me. We bridge two worlds now." As they stood at this threshold between their past lives and an uncertain future, Michael realized that the mysterious girl who had sought shelter in his shed during a storm had brought not just disruption but possibility. Their connection, born of instinct, choice, and something deeper than either, had created something entirely new. "It won't be easy," he said, feeling the weight of Thomas's hatred, the complications of straddling two worlds, the adjustments to his changed physiology. Lily's laugh, freer and wilder than before, rang through the morning air. "When has anything worth having ever been easy?" Together they began the long walk back toward what had been Michael's solitary cabin, now transformed into the first home of their shared existence. Behind them, the rising sun cast their shadows far ahead on the forest floor, two silhouettes merging into something that wasn't quite human, wasn't quite Lunari, but entirely their own. In the distance, a new sound rose, not the threatening howls of pursuit, but a welcoming call that seemed to promise connection, community, and the freedom they had both sought in their different ways. Michael and Lily answered together, their voices blending into something that echoed between worlds, announcing the beginning of a journey neither had imagined possible just days before. The forest, ancient and patient, simply continued its endless cycle of renewal around them, one more transformation among countless others in its timeless existence.